Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to review the Almaden Valley, California real estate market analysis for November of 2008. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro, and I'm also the president and CEO of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services, providing you with real estate services for all of Southern Silicon Valley. Now let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look at the numbers for supply and demand. And at first we're going to look just at past years. Now the reason we do this is so that we can take a look at these numbers without having to worry about seasonal influences. So this is just the month of November, going all the way back to 1999. And you can see that we've had some pretty dramatic changes recently in Almaden Valley. Now, Almaden Valley has historically been pretty good about staying stable in this down market, but over the last couple of months, we've seen that change a little bit. This is probably the first month we've seen such dramatic changes. Now, the inventory is actually up 42.03% from the same time last year. That's an increase of 29 homes. So between November of 2007 and November of 2008, we had the number of homes put on the market, the number of homes added to the inventory increased by 29, or the inventory total increased by 29, excuse me. Now that gave us a grand total of 98 homes on the market. If we take a look at just the homes that were listed, now that's also heading in a direction we'd rather not see. That's actually increasing. Now we tend to see this when markets start their first turn. And I tend to believe that that's actually, it's not that folks are perceiving that things are changing, but rather things change because of what the folks are doing. And in this case, I think a lot of folks are seeing how well the market had been doing in Almaden Valley and are putting their homes on the market to try and take advantage of it, thinking that we may be heading into a little bit more of a tough time than we've seen already. Now, the homes listed in the month of November increased by 18.18%. That's 4 more homes listed in the month of November in 2008 than in the same month in 2007. That gave us a total homes listed for the month of 26. So 26 homes were added to the market. Those are sellers adding their homes to the market. Now, if we go ahead and look at those same numbers for sales, you can see again we have a decrease. Now, it's a dramatic decrease when compared to the previous year. But if you also look at 2006, we can see that we got a bit of a dip, but it wasn't as substantial as the one we've seen here in 2008 between November of 2007 and November of 2008. Home sales have dropped 54.55%. Now, that's a substantial decrease, and that gave us 12 fewer homes sold in Almaden than were sold at the same time last year. Now that gave us a grand, and for those of you who are new, there's a number that I like to use that I call the magic ratio. It's not horribly magic, but it's an important number, and it's the ratio between the inventory and the solds. And basically what it tells you is how many months worth of inventory you have on hand. So if we froze the inventory right now and the sales numbers stayed as they are right now, how long would it take us in months to get all those homes sold? Now right now we sit at 9.8. So it would take about almost 10 months to get every home sold if the market froze as it is right now. Now, another way to think of this number, particularly if you're a seller, is I call it the competition index for sellers. And what that basically means is that for every home that is selling out there, there are 9.8 homes out there that are not getting sold. They're still on the market trying to get sold. Now, what's important about this number is that it's a kind of an interesting barometer. It relates to numbers that are very important, inventory and sales, and gives you a little bit of a way to think about how healthy the market currently is. And at 9.8, that's not great. I usually start worrying about a market when we get up to around 6 or more. We've obviously been over that number for a little while. Last month, this ratio stood at 7.13, so we've had a dramatic increase, about a 2.5 increase in this number. So just a huge amount of inventory being added, coupled with a big decrease in sales. Not a great indicator of where the market's going. Now remember, this isn't seasonally affected. This is all the month of November. So we can't say, well, we're in wintertime, and of course we're not performing as well as we would in other times of the year. That doesn't apply here because we're only looking at the winter month of November. Now, another way to look at this is how it compares to the county in general. Now, typically, historically, Almaden Valley has done better than the county on average, and that has changed. The county ratio for this number stood at 8.52 for November, so we're a full 1.3 over the county average for November. So that's not great news. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers for previous months. What we'll do is see if we can't get some information on where we're going with these numbers from these types of things. Try to see what led up to that, what happened following this time last year. See if there's any wisdom we can get from this to try and anticipate where things are going. Now, first we'll talk about inventory, and that is down 14.04% from last month. So this is going back just as August of 2007. So now this does have seasonal influences here, and we can cover what that means here in a second. But as I said, inventory is down 14.04%. Now that's a good piece of information. That gave us 16 fewer homes on the inventory this month than last month. It's good to see that dip. It's also normal to see that dip in the month of November, simply because folks take their homes off of the market during the Thanksgiving and Christmas seasons, during the winter holidays. A little bit more interesting this month because it indicates that we still have a lot of folks who are selling their homes at their discretion. What we've seen in some communities is the inventory numbers have not dropped as much as you would expect for the winter time period because because banks don't do that, right? They don't have to worry about folks coming over for Christmas and Thanksgiving, so they leave a foreclosed property on the market during the winter months. Same goes for sellers that are in very dire circumstances. So if they really got to sell that home, if it's a short sale, for instance, or someone who is very concerned about having to stop making their mortgage payments just because they don't have the money over the next couple of months, those folks tend to leave their homes on the market. So the fact that we've seen such a substantial drop in November is encouraging because it says that there are more folks, at least in Almaden Valley, who are selling their homes at their discretion rather than because they have to. If you look at other communities like Morgan Hill and even Los Gatos and some other, not Los Gatos as much, I'm sorry, but Morgan Hill, you don't see this. You tend to see the number of homes going off the market in the wintertime being not as big as it used to be. Now, in Morgan Hill, 74% of the homes that sold in November were foreclosure homes, and I think that explains why there were so many homes that stayed on the market in that particular month in Morgan Hill. Now, let's go ahead and talk more about Almaden. This is the number of homes that were listed. Again, it's a good number. It's lower than it was last month, but again, it's also normal for the season. So I don't think we can take a whole lot from that other than we're seeing some normal seasonal influences, Almaden, which in itself is sort of good news because with the amount of foreclosures and short sales, we've seen a lot of these numbers not being what we'd expect for the season simply because the market is in such trouble in those areas. In some areas, we're actually seeing increases in the number of homes being listed simply because some sellers are concerned that we are just at another cliff or another overhang before another big drop comes in home prices in Silicon Valley. Now, the total number of homes listed in the month of November of 2008 dropped 36.59% from October of 2008. That's a total of 15 fewer homes listed. That's very good news. Now, the sales numbers, not so good. We've actually seen a drop in November. If you look at the same time last year, we didn't really see that. We saw the season sort of extending up into November. We actually had an increase from September. Now, we can see here that between September and October, there was a bit of a bump. Then we dramatically dropped below the September levels in November. Now, that gives us a 37.5% drop in the total number of homes sold. That is 6 fewer homes sold in November than October. Frankly, last year was a little bit of an aberration. This year actually reflects more of a normal market. We tend to see a drop in sales. We didn't see a drop in sales in some other communities. Let me explain why I don't think this is something that's particularly bad for Almaden. As I mentioned before, not as much influence of foreclosure and short sale properties as far as the homes that sold are concerned. And what that basically means is that not a lot of people who are shopping for short sales and foreclosures will be coming to Almaden and buying properties because there just aren't as many as there are in some other communities. So that would reflect a drop in the total number of homes that get sold, a total drop in the volume, because the biggest motion we're seeing in the market right now is in the foreclosure and short sale segment of the market. So buyers and sellers tend to be gravitating towards those types of listings right now, which explains why in Almaden we're seeing a bit of a drop in the total number of home sales, while in some areas we're seeing a bit of an increase. Okay, I hope that explains that. So it's bad news and it's good news. It's good news because a lot of folks aren't suffering under foreclosure in Almaden Valley, but it's bad news in that we would much rather have higher sales. But it's not really bad news to be concerned about because it actually falls in very correctly with the season that we're in if this were a normal season for Almaden. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at the home prices. This is, of course, something sellers are keenly interested in, and they should be, because if you don't have this number set right, your home isn't going to get sold. We've actually seen pretty good performance on average sales price. We're only down a little bit from the same time last year. The average home price is down 1.59% in Almaden Valley. That's a dollar drop of $19,211 from the same time last year. The average home price was $1,187,420. Now, if we take a look at what the median home price was, we can see that dropped even more substantially. Now, what that is telling us is that there is more activity at the low end of the price scale in Almaden Valley than there is at the top end of the price scale in Almaden Valley. Now, you can see that the median price dropped far more than the average price between 2007 and 2008. So those are indicators to everyone out there that a lot more attention is being given to homes at the lower end than at the higher end. The median price change was down 8.01%. That's an $87,500 drop from the same time last year. Median price was $1,005,000. Now, the highest priced home in Almaden Valley was on 21150 Rackstad Drive, and that sold for $1,975,000. It originally was listed for $2,195,000, and it sold in only 4 days. So that was that shows that there's still some robustness at the high end. We've still got folks who are out there able to buy at the high end, and that home was only on the market for 4 days. And I looked more deeply into that particular listing and found that that was there was no funny business there. It wasn't a home that was relisted to reset those numbers. So that's a very realistic number. Now, the lowest priced single-family residential home in Almaden Valley was 6129 Monteverde Drive, and that sold for $772,200. The original list price on that was $799,000, and that was on the market for 34 days. Now, the average price per square foot for a single-family residential home in Almaden in November of 2008 was $438.57. Now, that's down from last month's average price per square foot of $452.34. So, what do we take from this? What's the good information we can gather from this? Well, average prices are definitely down. If you're trying to get your home sold and you've been on the market for a while, this is clearly an area you need to look. Everyone out there who's buying is expecting down prices, and that applies everywhere. It used to be we could say there were a few pockets where that wasn't the case. Almaden was one of them. Los Gatos was another. Parts of Palo Alto. Simply isn't the case anymore. Now every property pretty much has to assume that it needs to be lower in an asking price than it was at the same time last year. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the home prices in past months and see if we can't get any insight into where we should be pricing our homes given the performance that we've seen. Now you can see things are relatively flat for the year, going back to August of 2007. You can see a few peaks here and there. When you're looking at a graph like this, you really want to try and mentally figure where the average line would be drawn. If you were just sort of drawing a line of the average for everything here. All these peaks and valleys often can be explained by one or two homes that sold in that particular month that may have been extremely high priced, or maybe a property that sold at the extreme low end. If we look at the average, we can see really a general trend up, but only very, very slightly up. As I mentioned before, the average home price was $1,187,420. The price change from last month, between October and November, it was up 13.61%. That was an increase of $142,265. Median price change was up 2.92%, and that was a change of $28,500. Now, total homes sold were 10. We had 10 homes sold in Almaden Valley in November of 2008. And right now, the key thing that sellers need to understand is that price is extremely important, but you also need to have an agent who's really getting as much exposure to your property as possible. What's really interesting is we're seeing so much competition now between homes that are foreclosures and short sales versus conventionally sold homes. This is more of a countywide phenomenon. I'm getting a lot of clients who are giving me the usual information real estate agents get, which is how much I want to spend, how many bedrooms and baths, how much square footage, those types of things. But now we're getting buyers who are coming in and specifically saying, I want that criteria, but I only want you to search for foreclosures and short sales. Now, some agents might just jump through that hoop and provide it that way. I always encourage my buying clients to consider both types of for sale properties, short sales and foreclosures, and conventional properties, simply because there's oftentimes more leeway in the price on a conventional home than there is on some of these foreclosure and short sale homes, where banks have a number in mind that they're really not going to go below. Where on the flip side, particularly in Almaden, where some folks have owned these properties as the original owners, there were a couple of properties that sold this month. One that was built in the early 80s, one that was built in the 60s. And from what I can see in the records, both of those homes sold from the original owners. Now, can you imagine the amount of equity that the person who bought that home in 1961 had in their Almaden property? A lot more willingness to negotiate in situations like that, and something that and a level of ability to be willing to take a lower price that you might not see from a foreclosure and short sale. So if you're a buyer out there, please do go out and look at those short sales and foreclosures, but don't ignore the conventional sales based on the assumption that the only way you're going to get the best deal is with a foreclosure or a short sale, because I really don't think that's the case. Now, the median price, again, notice the difference here. Now, we did have one home sell that was tended to be on the higher end, and we already talked about that property on Rackstead Drive. That was almost a $2 million home. So we saw the average price artificially nudged up a bit, but notice that the median price stayed almost the same, showing that the real sort of emphasis on properties was lower than the average price would indicate. And that's good information to know. It shows that there's a lot more activity at the lower end of the market. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how many days it took to get homes sold when compared to the same month in past years. Now, as you can see, we're up to about the same level we were in 2006. Now, one thing that's interesting to note is in months where we see increases in the number of homes sold, which we didn't see this month, but just for reference for other months, when those sales do increase, we do tend to see an increase in the days to sell, simply because that reflects the fact that we're selling more properties, and the odds then are higher that we're selling properties that have been on the market longer than other times, than other periods. So right now, is this a real number? Is this a good number to base your expectations on if you're a seller? Yeah, frankly, I have to say that this is a fairly accurate number. I've reviewed it. It's not skewed too terribly by anything. I'm going to give you more of a breakdown on these numbers. Now, the days to sell increased by 18 days. That's a 33.96% increase from the same time last year. Now, the lowest days on market was 4. And if you'll recall, that was how many days it took to get the Rackstead property sold. That was nearly $2 million. Now, the longest days on market was 198, and the next closest to that was 134. Now, we had one home sell in the first week that it was listed. We had 2 homes sell in 8 to 30 days, 3 homes sold in 31 to 90 days, and 3 homes sold in 90 to 180 days, and 1 home sold in over 180 days. Now, 30% of the homes sold in 30 days or less. What's also interesting to note here is that there was only 1 home that was a foreclosure home in all of Almaden Valley. Now, that's very different from other communities. That's 10% of the homes that sold. And that really beats the county average. There's over half the properties that sold in the county, in Santa Clara County in November of 2008, were foreclosure or short sale properties. 74% of the homes in Morgan Hill were short sale or foreclosure properties. So that's actually very good news for folks in Almaden Valley. You're not seeing a lot of folks in Almaden Valley having to go through the foreclosure process. So that's just good news. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the days to sell just over past months. And again, we're looking all the way back to August of 2007 just to sort of get an idea of where we stand here in comparison to previous months. Now, as you can see, we're up from last month. Days to sell is up 9.23%. That's an increase of 6 days. You would normally expect to see days increasing a bit here in the first parts of the winter. We see in last year between October and November, we did see an increase. We saw then flat performance between November and December, which would be expected. January, we usually see the number drop, and that doesn't necessarily, the days on market drops, but that doesn't tend to be an indicator of a increase in sales or increased or improved activity. It just shows that the homes that sold in January tended to be down as far as days on market are concerned. Now, that 33 days from last January was actually not typical. We typically see a little bit higher numbers. But then as we head into the selling months, now this is the phenomenon I was explaining earlier, as we head into February, March, and April, when sales start to increase a little bit, we start to see the days on market increase because we're getting rid of a lot of these homes that have been on the market through the winter and hadn't sold yet. And then we start to see that number drop as folks enter the market in, say, April. March and April tend to be good months for folks to enter the market. May, we'll start to see shorter times on market as folks who put their homes on the market in April or March are getting their homes sold in May and June. Now, what are the homes that are getting sold that quickly? Those are the ones that are the best priced in their price, or the best features in their price range, or the best homes in those price ranges. So it's very important for sellers to take a look at the competition. What do their homes look like? Are they in better shape? Do they have newer upgrades? If they do, you need to be better priced than those homes. Then we see another little jump in July, August, and September as, again, we get another big selling surge, and we see more homes that have been on the market longer being taken off of the inventory. So what can we learn from this? What are we going to see coming up in the coming months? Well, I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes from last year. I don't, despite the fact we've had this big economic downturn, as far as how months relate to one another, I think these will probably go right along in line. I think we'll see relatively flat performance through the winter. And then once we get into February and March, I'll bet we're seeing an increase in both an increase in the days to sell, but also an increase in sales. So that's all, I think, relatively good news for Almaden, but we are seeing some big impacts from the market in general. So what's the overall feeling for Almaden? Well, the downturn market is definitely here. We've seen inventory numbers jump through the roof. I think sales numbers will continue to be affected by this. I think if we want to get our homes sold in Almaden Valley, there's going to have to be some attention spent on thinking about how much we can drop the price of a home to get it sold. As we see more and more sellers sitting on the market for longer periods of time, we're definitely going to see the willingness to take lower prices increase. So that's really the breaks for Almaden this month. It'll be interesting to see how things pan out in the coming months. And of course, when that information is available, I will share it with you here. Now, I do appreciate you taking the time to come out and listen to what I have to say on these market reports. If you'd like to get in contact with me, if you'd like to look at any of my other videos relating to real estate market analysis, or you'd like to listen to my weekly podcast or any of the articles I've written on real estate, you can find those at my website at www.soldbyrobert.com. Or if you'd prefer to email me with any questions, concerns, ideas, or anything else you'd like to talk about, feel free to send those emails to robert@soldbyrobert.com. Or if you prefer to call me directly, feel free to do so at 408-852-0525. If you prefer to talk online, you can find me with AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM. My screen name is The Rebel Broker. If you're a Skype user, simply use Rebel Broker, and you'll find me there. Now, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying or selling or investing in real estate in Silicon Valley, please feel free to give them my information or give me a call. I'll be happy to help them in any way I can. Now, even if you're not in my area, if you're anywhere in the United States, I can help you find the right agent for your needs. Just get in touch using any of the means mentioned above, and I will find the right agent for you. Thanks again, and I look forward to talking to y'all next time.